We're going through the Bodhisattva ideal, talking a lot about different perfections, different stages, which we can look to cultivate in order to benefit all beings and ourselves. So this is the last talk looking at prajna, or wisdom. So we've got the list of the paramitas here. We've gone through, all the way through, down to wisdom. We've had a few talks on wisdom already, and this is the last one. So I'm following on from Satyajyoti's excellent talk last week, and that was called Practical Wisdom. It looked at the limitations of our conceptual understanding, and we saw how we need to see concepts as a guide or a map, rather than thinking of them as absolute truths. So she was talking about how if we've got a map of the Peak District, it'll really help us to know where we can go for some lovely walks. But if we think the Peak District is the map, we're going to be a bit confused, and we're going to miss out on a lot of the beauty of life. So with these talks on prajna, we're trying to see how wisdom and reality itself is different or more than our conceptual understanding. Our conceptual minds can't comprehend reality as it is. We might be able to understand reality better, or at least be able to live more in accordance with it, through a different approach than just relying on our mere intellectual understanding. So wisdom, the word itself, it's often taken to mean intellectual understanding in our language, or knowledge. But in Buddhism, the intellect is seen to be just a little part of us, not the whole of us. And it's only a part of how we're able to know or understand something. So we have our head, but we also have our heart, and we also have our volitions or our guts, and we can know things on all of those levels. So yeah, Buddhist teachings, they try to show us that it's limiting to expect that our mundane conceptual minds can comprehend reality as it is. And it would be mistaken if we tried to rely on that. If we wanted to live in accordance with reality, if we just relied on our conceptual minds, we'd be very, very limited. So with this talk, we're going to look at a particular sutra that's going to try and help us to understand that. It's going to help us to challenge and perhaps let go of any over-reliance or dependence that we have on conceptual ideas as truths of themselves. So I know I've seen you all looking and reading intently already. So we've left the text that we're going to look at out on your chairs. So it's called the Heart Sutra, and it's a text from the body of literature known as the Prajna Paramita literature. And we heard a little bit about that from Satyajyoti last week as well. And there's a whole body of work that grows out of this Prajna Paramita, and it's called the Prajna Paramita literature. It's characterised by its attempts to blow open and break apart and take us beyond conceptual ideas. And it became very, very popular at the time that it was being written, because it was very radical and it was a challenging approach to the traditional teachings at the time. Yeah, the traditional teachings, a lot of people are finding them quite literal, quite dry, and quite lacking in spirit. It's a little bit ironic, because I'm feeling like as I'm talking, it all sounds a little bit dry, and a little bit lacking in spirit. So I'm hoping, as we start to read the sutra and start to explore it, you'll find why this text was known to be something that could help people get more to the spirit of Buddhism, more into the beauty and kind of expansive truth of reality, rather than just words on a page, dry lectures, or to categories and lists. That's the idea. But yeah, there is many, many Prajna Paramita texts, so this is just one of them. The texts were written over a span of about 500 years, so it's a very, very popular way of approaching Buddhism at the time. Some examples that you might know of are the Diamond Sutra and the Ratnaguna Samchaya Gatha, which I'm sure if you actually heard some readings from, you might recognise as readings that we hear quite a lot in our Buddhist tradition. And the Prajna Paramita, or Perfection of Wisdom literature, comes in all kind of shapes and sizes. There's a 32,000 lines one, an 8,000 lines one, and then here we have the Heart Sutra, which fits on just one A4 sheet of paper. So this is kind of like the essential, the really condensed teaching of the whole of the Prajna Paramita literature, which, as I said, spanned 500 years of writing. So this is really the heart of the Prajna Paramita literature. and it's used across all Buddhist schools and traditions, and it's been translated many, many times. It's very, very condensed, as I've said. It's only a one page, and so it's pointing to ideas that are actually mapped out and argued at great length across many, many years. So it's got a lot of ideas that are just condensed into one page, so it will take a little bit of looking at to try and understand what those ideas are pointing us to. These ideas are probably also not really what we're familiar with, so hopefully we'll be more familiar with them by the end of the talk, but it's only 40 minutes, so we'll see how we get on. So this translation, it's by a guy called Philip Kapleau, who is an American Zen Buddhist. And this is a translation that we use in the Triratna Buddhist community, and we really do use this text quite regularly. We have it in the Sevenfold Puja, and a lot of Buddhists will learn it off by heart and may even recite it daily as part of their practice. So what we're going to do is we're going to read it all together out loud now. So if you'd like to find a sheet, it's going to include some chanting, because at the end, surprise, surprise, the heart of the literature is a mantra. Okay, so we're just going to see how it sounds to us, see what effect hearing the sutra has for us. And it's okay if you don't know it or if you've never read it before. You might want to join in, or you might want to just listen. It's got a particular rhythm to it. But read along if you want to, and just see if it has an effect for you. It can be approached a little bit like poetry, like we might not necessarily understand it, we might not even like it, but it may still have an effect for us. Okay, so let's just see how it goes. I'll start us off. So the Heart Sutra. The Bodhisattva of compassion, when he meditated deeply, saw the emptiness of all five skandhas, and sundered the bonds that caused him suffering. Here then, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is only emptiness, emptiness only form. Feeling, thought and choice, consciousness itself, are the same as this. All things are by nature void. They are not born or destroyed, nor are they stained or pure, nor do they wax or wane. So, in emptiness, no form, no feeling, thought or choice, nor is there consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No colour, sound, smell, taste, touch, or what the mind takes hold of. Nor even act of sensing. No ignorance or end of it. Nor all that comes of ignorance. No withering, no death, no end of them. Nor is there pain or cause of pain, or ceasing pain or noble path to lead from pain. Not even wisdom to attain. Attainment too is emptiness. So know that they were suffering, holding to nothing whatever, but dwelling in prajna wisdom, is freed of delusive hindrance, rid of the fear bred by it, and reaches clearest nirvana. All Buddhas of past and present, Buddhas of future time, using this prajna wisdom, come to form a perfect vision. Hear then the great Dharani, the radiant peerless mantra, the prajna paramitam, whose words lay all there. Hear and believe its truth. Gate, 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 Arasangate, Bodhi Swaha. Gate, gate, gate,
Sangate Bodhisattva, Gate Gate Paragate, Sangate Bodhisattva.
Thank you. There's probably a whole lot of mixed responses to that text in this room right now. Probably mixed responses between us, but maybe even mixed responses within us as well. So I'm just going to suggest some different responses that you may have had, and we'll see if they hit the mark. So this is how a lot of people can often experience the Heart Sutra. Baffling, incomprehensible, peaceful, negative, positive, fear, inspiration, boring and repetitive, a sense of letting go. So in my own experience, when I first heard this sutra in this room, I thought it was pretty strange and I didn't understand it, but it was still quite compelling. I didn't understand it, it was completely incomprehensible, but I found it intriguing and I wanted to read it more and I wanted to hear more about it. It was also the first text that I learned off by heart, and I really, really like learning anything, any poems, any text, Buddhist texts, off by heart. I think it's quite important. So when I'm at home, if I go through the Heart Sutra off by heart on my own, I can go through the sutra slowly and I can let those words really, I can reflect on each word, hear each word maybe in my heart rather than just reading it off a page. And in that way the text itself takes on a lot more meaning than if I was just to read it, even if I was reading it every day. I think there's also something to be said for saying it all together, but there's also something for knowing something off by heart, so that if you're just walking down the road one day, maybe you'll see something and it will remind you, form is only emptiness, emptiness only form. So I have started to have those experiences sometimes after I've learnt this off by heart. So I might be on a train, pulling into Sheffield after a visit away, and I'll kind of look around and see all of these different components in the train. I'll wonder, who made all of these different components? Who put all this together? Which engineers, which designers made this train happen? And all these different people on this train. So I can kind of have this much vaster, much more kind of interconnected experience of life because I know this text off by heart. And as I go through it and we look at what each bit means, then maybe you'll get a sense of that. So yeah, we'll go through the text and look a bit closer to see what's trying to be communicated. It might be helpful for you to look at the text while I'm speaking, but it might be also interesting if you just reflect and listen, because sometimes if we've got words in front of us, we might really try and look at the words and think, if I look at these words long enough, I'll understand what it means. So you might want to have them as a guide, but you also might just want to listen and reflect while I'm speaking. Yeah, words themselves, they can be a bit distracting or a bit abstract and separating. And as we heard from Satyajoti last week, words can only take us so far. So the experience of me talking and you hearing might mean something more. Of course, I'll use words because really that's all I've got. So we begin with a scene of the Bodhisattva of compassion meditating deeply. So immediately we can have this image of a Bodhisattva in deep, deep meditation. And the Bodhisattva of compassion, this is Avalokiteshvara, and I've written his name up on the board. So Avalokiteshvara is the Bodhisattva that's most associated with compassion. He's known for his deep wish to alleviate the suffering of all beings. His name, it means the Lord who looks down, or another translation is the kind gazer. So he sees the suffering of all beings and he looks upon them with compassion. Compassion is what arises when love meets suffering. So he sees suffering in the world. He is full of love for all beings and compassion arises. So there's a link here between wisdom and compassion. Here we have a text on the perfection of wisdom. But the Bodhisattva that is part of this scene is the Bodhisattva of compassion. So this shows that you can't have wisdom without compassion. There's a close connection between the mind and the heart. So he's meditating deeply. Another translation for that is that he's coursing in the deep wisdom that has gone beyond. So he's in this higher realm of being, and he's seeing the suffering of the lower realms. And he's in deep meditation. And we hear that he sees the emptiness of all 5 skandhas. So I've written the 5 skandhas out here. So what are the 5 skandhas and why are they empty? So let's have a look at that. So the skandhas, that literally means like clumps, I think. Is it clumps or heaps? Heaps, yeah. So they're categories. So the skandhas are a way of categorising the whole of our experience. So it's how we experience ourselves and the world around us. And within these 5 categories, it contains everything. There's nothing separate to these categories in our experience or the world. So the first one is form or rupa. So that's things, objects, matter, or just appearances. And this can even include dreams. So this is just objects like lectern, camera. Just the things that we perceive as being separate to ourselves. And we have our own form that we perceive as our own form as well. So we perceive that we are existent and that there's objects in the world. Okay. Feeling or Vedana, you might have heard of this one before. Feeling is just what comes up every time we come into contact with something. It's our sensations. So we have pleasant sensations and unpleasant sensations. And if we just sense out how we are right now, we've probably got pleasant and unpleasant Vedana. So that's just feeling. We have thought or sanya. So these are perceptions. How we label what we experience. So this is when we recognise and name something. So the form is there's a yellow wall there and a red bit in it. And I know that's the Buddhist Centre's wall. I'm in the Buddhist Centre. I'm in Sheffield, I'm in Walkley, there's a door there, and I can go through it. It's perceptions. And then when I look at my friend here, I know that the label that I'm going to use for my friend here is Dharmamaya. Because I recognise her, I recognise that form, and I label it. And then we have choice, samskaras. So these are volitions, urges, or propensities. So I'm just standing here, but I might want to move over here, and I can. I really want to have a cup of tea, but I'm going to have to wait maybe half an hour maybe. Or no, even longer because of the groups. I do really like talking in groups, so I will go to the group. Yeah, that's my choice. I'll go to the group. And we have consciousness, or vijnana. So that's our awareness. So again, we have this awareness that it perceives that I have self here, and there is a world outside of there. And liking words as I do, even though they can only take us so far. We have vijnana, and vi here is the same as divided. So if you think of the word divided, there's a vi in the middle. So again, it's this divided consciousness that this is how we experience the world, that we're separate and that there's other people out there. So these categories are what the Buddha used to show people that there isn't anything outside of our experience except these things. All parts of our experience are included, and nothing else can be seen to go on outside of these categories, in ourselves or in the world out there. And they might not seem like very natural categories to us. They might not be the categories we choose to encompass our whole experience. But presumably they fitted quite well with Indian thought at the time, and the Buddha used them to teach people about experience and about the way he saw it. So he used them as a way to help people to see that they don't really have a self that exists independently. It's just that this is how we experience it. If we meditated on each skandha, we would see that none of them can be regarded as the self, like I'm not just my feelings, or I'm not just my choices. I have all of these elements in my experience, and they're all interconnected. They're also constantly changing. So our bodies age, the child that we were is now the mature adult that we are. Our feelings vary and shift around, as do our thoughts and our wishes. So everything's always in constant flux and constant process. And all of these aspects, all of these categories depend on each other. Our consciousness itself is affected by how we live our lives. So our feelings and thoughts and choices that we make affect our consciousness. So they're all interdependent. So there's no way of finding one little thing that exists outright on its own, that is in ourself, or anything out there that exists on its own, because they're all interrelated. And these skandhas, they became a really well-known teaching. This method of categorising experience as a way of showing non-selfhood, it became really, really popular. And so the Heart Sutra and other Paramita texts, they challenge this approach. So I've just gone through these categories and told you that the Buddha taught that this is how you can categorise everything in experience. But the Heart Sutra is challenging even this. And that's because we can start to think that these categories really exist. So this is a teaching to show us that ourselves and nothing in the world really exists. But if we're hearing about these categories, we're going to think, oh no, but they do exist. Even though they're interconnected, they also still exist. And you can just get a bit confused. So the Paramita is trying to kind of take us away from that very, very natural response as humans to try and make anything that we hear about real and existent in its own right. So yeah, we're likely to think that any concepts we hear about may exist independently. The Heart Sutra is trying to tell us that they don't. So yeah, it's helping us to see that ourself and the world doesn't exist in the way that we think it does. And they don't even exist in the way that the Buddhist teachings are telling us they do. I'm not sure if I'm with myself. So yeah, any Buddhist concept, any category, any concept is itself a construct. It's a guide. It's like an intellectual map. So like I was saying, we have a map of the Peak District, but if we're actually in the Peak District and looking at the map, we're going to miss out on the beauty of life. So if we think these really exist, we're going to miss out on a lot of beauty and freedom. So we do need maps. You know, I probably couldn't get to the Peak District without one. I mean, I kind of could, but then I'd get lost and wouldn't know how to get home again. So we do need maps. But they need to be seen and used as a map and not held on to as an absolute truth. They're just a way of describing what is ultimately ever-changing, a mysterious and interconnected process. So this is why we hear that Avalokitesvara sees the emptiness of all five skandhas, and that by doing so he sunders or cuts the bonds that cause him suffering. So if we hold on to constructs as fixed and permanent, and expect them to remain fixed and permanent, then we will suffer. If we think we have a self and expect it to stay fixed and permanent, then we will suffer. If we think that these skandhas really exist and want them to be fixed and permanent, then we will suffer. Because things are always changing. So the emptiness of all five skandhas. So we've looked at what the five skandhas are, but what is emptiness? How are the five skandhas empty? The word emptiness is a bit misleading, and I think a lot, because emptiness is used as a translation, that's why a lot of the time the sutra can be heard of as negative, because it sounds like there's just nothing there, things are empty, there's just nothing there. And it's a translation of a Sanskrit term, which is shunyata, which I've written down there as well. So shunyata, what is shunyata? So it's not that nothing exists or that I don't exist at all, it's just not, I don't exist in the way that I think I do, because things are changing. But we do simplify our experience in order to make sense of it. But that means that we're not as able to see things in process because we're making things into objects. So like a meditation cushion, for example. So this looks like a thing. I'm going to tell you why it isn't. Then I'm going to tell you more about what shunyata is and why this might be shunyata. Okay, so It's made of kind of blue cloth. It's probably been dyed that colour. I don't think there are kind of ways of getting that colour cloth without dyeing it. It's been manufactured, so somebody's had to design it and make it. And lots of decisions have been made in order to do that. Somebody had to think, I want to buy some meditation cushions for the Great Hall, so let's get some nice blue ones. And this is why this cushion is here. It couldn't have been here without all of those previous conditions. It's been used a lot, I reckon. It's got a little bit squashed. It probably wasn't this squashed when it was made, so it's changing all the time. And it's been used by lots and lots and lots of different people as well. So some people might have found this cushion and thought, yeah, that's the right cushion for me, I'll sit on that. And then they've got really bad back pain and gone off and had a really unhappy evening. And I hope that's not any of you today. That's why it's really, really important to make sure you've got your cushions, the right colour. And somebody might have found this cushion, sat on it, and had the most blissful meditation they've yet had because, it just worked for them. And whatever else was going on for them at that time, they were able to really focus and really experience a lot of bliss. So yeah, it's just a cushion, but it's had a lot of impact on the world already. And it will continue to have a lot of impact on the world until who knows where it will end up. Okay, so it doesn't exist independently, nor does anything else. So I could say that that cushion is Shunyata. There are other translations that might help us to get a richer sense of this term, emptiness, or Shunyata. I'm just going to read these out and just listen to these and see what effect they have on you. Openness, boundlessness, non-fixedness, fullness. Potential, impermanent, the blue sky, subject to conditions, limitless, mysterious, inconceivable, interconnected, no self or other, process, flow, freedom, bliss. So Shunyata is pointing to an experience, or perhaps just even a glimpse of an experience, a sense of reality that isn't quite like our usual way of seeing things. And that's what the sutra is doing too. It's pointing us to an experience of reality that isn't quite like our usual one. The words are pointing us, they're guiding us towards an experience that is more like the way things are. So we can substitute the word emptiness for any of those words that I've just read out that might inspire us more. And we might even think of a time when we've had an experience that comes close to or resembles those descriptions. So have we had any moments when things seemed vaster or more open, less fixed, more full of potential, more interconnected and free than they usually do? We may remember some experiences of that. So for example, we probably all know some joy of realising that we're not as fixed as we thought. So most of us have done the introductory course. We probably made changes to our life as part of that course. And the joy of those changes, the freedom that those changes brought for us, might partly be what keeps us coming to the centre. I was on retreat once and I was doing a lot of meditation and study, and I was doing a walking meditation out in the garden of a retreat centre, so walking very slowly and then going and sitting and meditating and then walking very slowly outside on the grass. And I can remember just a flash of a moment where the grass just looked different. It looked as if it would exist whether I was looking at it or not. It almost like it kind of rose up and it was kind of up here and not separate to me, but it would exist even if I wasn't looking at it. And it was only a flash, but it was very different. It was just very different to what I was usually experiencing. And the result of that was that I just felt like laughing. I felt a deep relief, a joy. There was stillness and energy and beauty in the world around me. So I can't really explain that, but that was an experience that I had. I also really like looking at starlings. So starlings, when they flock, they do this thing called murmuration, and you can see it like in Brighton or London, and places in Wales, even places in the Peak District. So when they're flocking it in the morning or in the evening and they're going off to own little places where they can spend the day before they come back. They do this flocking thing, and you probably know what I'm talking about, and there's just thousands of birds. Each bird is just following the next bird, and they're creating this beautiful, beautiful image in the sky as they're all kind of flocking together. And I like seeing that because it reminds me that beauty can arise from interconnectedness. So again, no birds thinking, right, I know what shape I'm going to make today. It's going to look like this. All right, Bob the Starling, this is what it's going to look like. They're just following each other. And they're deeply interconnected, and they're creating this very, very beautiful form. I went to an exhibition in a museum once in Cambridge with my sister, and there was this little room right at the back of this museum. And it was an exhibition about minerals and like the molecular structure of minerals. It was this kind of geological museum. And I read this little bit about fluoride and how it's the light, the colour that it is. So it might be like a pinkish colour or a greenish colour. And it's that colour because within each molecule of that mineral there's an empty space. And the light is being absorbed into that empty space, and then a particular light is being reflected back, and that's why it's the beautiful colour. I just found that really inspiring at the time, and I'm not a scientist, so I don't even know if I've described it right, but I just really liked the whole kind of concept that there are empty spaces in molecules and in atoms. And that really works for me in terms of kind of just experiencing things and people as more open and less fixed than I think they are. Other people in the world seems more alive and more beautiful when I think of the empty space that is within everything. So yeah, as I said, we may also have our own moments where we can remember things as being a bit more open and a bit less fixed than we think they are normally. So, we've got Avalokiteshvara, he's the Bodhisattva of compassion, and he's coursing in the deep wisdom of the beyond. He's seeing the emptiness, the boundlessness, the openness, the non-fixedness of the five skandhas. That's himself and the world and the whole of experience. And he sunders the bonds that cause him suffering. So by opening up to the mystery of reality, we can be free from the pain that clinging to the idea that ourselves and things are fixed and separate results in. So if we cling to the idea that we're fixed and separate, that results in pain, but we can open up to the mystery of reality that is beyond that. If we reflect on and embrace conditionality as our map, instead of the map that we usually use, there can be joy and freedom and limitless potential. So moving on through the sutra, it goes on to cover different aspects of experience and different categories of thought that are also empty and that we can't depend on as being an absolute truth. So first of all, it goes through some dualistic notions. So we're not born or destroyed, things aren't stained or pure, nor do they wax or wane. So these are dualistic ideas, and we're hearing that they are also empty. So they're relative constructs. Nothing can be stained unless you've also got the idea of something being pure. So therefore they can't exist in their own right, they're empty. Our senses too. So you might kind of have gone through those and you think, yeah, but our senses, the way that I can kind of see stuff and hear stuff, I can rely on that, that's definitely true, that's reality, isn't it? Because I'm experiencing it, so it can't be denied. But again, the Heart Sutra says that these are empty too. So no colour, no sound, no smell, no taste, touch, or what the mind takes hold of. So our mind is also a sense in Buddhism. And we heard a little bit about our senses from Satyajoti last week. So they've evolved and they've developed to suit us as human beings. And they're dependent on our needs as human beings. And they're limited by our biology. What we can see is limited by the biology of our eye. If we were a bat, we would hear things very different, and that would be our kind of reality would be kind of sonar or something, I think. And dogs, they can smell all sorts of smells that we can't smell, so their reality is very different to our reality. So there's no reason why our reality needs to be kind of the one. And I was somewhere recently and I saw this, it was like a waiting room, and I saw this book that was helping people to quit smoking. but it was in Braille. So I was opening up this page and looking at all these dots, so many dots in this book, and I was trying to kind of, sense out the dots, and there was no way I was going to be able to read that. And I just think it's so incredible that people who have to do that are able to kind of develop this sensitivity in order to feel and read Braille. So again, I think the way that I feel something is reality, but a blind person would be able to feel a lot more, and probably just their senses would be very different to mine. Okay, so if we can't rely on our senses, then surely we can rely on the Dharma, because, the Buddhist teachings, he's trying to help us to see reality. So if we just listen to those teachings, then that will be reality, won't it? We'll just understand it, and that will be reality, and we'll be able to hold on to that. But again, the Heart Sutra is looking to challenge that notion that we can just hold on to a construct and think, right, that's reality. So we've got a bit of this sutra that's saying, no ignorance or end of it, nor all that comes of ignorance. And that little section is talking about the wheel of life. So I think we've just taken our image of the wheel of life down from the bookshop and put a very beautiful image back in its place. But we normally have this wheel of life image, and we show it at the introductory course so that we can look at the gap, see how we can try and choose to do things differently. But again, it's just a map. The wheel of life isn't really how the world is. It's a helpful map to help us to understand why we behave the way that we do and how things are all conditioned. So because of ignorance, we go through birth, aging and death in our life, but it's not, we can't just hold on to the wheel of life and say this is absolutely true, it's reality. It just helps us to move towards reality. It helps us to let go of older maps that we think aren't as helpful anymore. It helps us to drop wrong views and move towards a better understanding of reality. And the Noble Truths are included in this part of the Heart Sutra as well. So the 4 Noble Truths that we look at in the introductory course. Again, we can't hold on to those. So nor is there pain or cause of pain, or cease in pain or noble path to lead from pain. They're the 4 Noble Truths. These concepts, we can use them like a raft. So say we're over here and there's this big, vast ocean, and we're trying to kind of move towards living in accordance with reality, but we've got to kind of cross this vast ocean to do so. And we can make a raft out of the Buddhist ideas and use that as a way to kind of try and steer our way through all of our ways of seeing the world that are a bit topsy-turvy. So we can't do without that raft, because we'll just never get anywhere across the ocean. We might be able to swim a little bit, and then we'll get tired. Or if we get halfway across the ocean and we've had this raft, and we think, we know a little bit like what reality is like now. We're kind of living a little bit better than we used to. Maybe we don't need this anymore, and abandon it, then we're going to not last very long. So although I'm here saying that these are just concepts, the 4 Noble Truths, the wheel of life, they're only concepts. They don't exist in their own right. We do kind of need to use them for as long as we're kind of finding that we're not living life in accordance with reality. We're kind of human beings trying our best, but we need to have Buddhist ideas to try to kind of let go of these topsy-turvy views that are bringing us up against reality in painful ways. So there's not even wisdom to attain, the Heart Sutra says. Attainment too is emptiness. So I reckon that there might have just been some bigwigs around at the time who were like, yeah, okay, but I'm really wise, and I've attained so much, so you're just all going to have to listen to me now because I know everything. And again, this Heart Sutra is there just trying to say, you don't necessarily know everything just because you think you understand it conceptually. There's a lot more to life than that. So moving on through the sutra, it then takes us into a realm of beauty and joy and fearlessness. So I think there really is quite a poetic rhythm to the sutra, which I really enjoy. So after we've had all this kind of blowing apart of concepts, we hear what wondrous joy Avalokiteshvara experiences as a result of seeing emptiness and as a result of understanding conditionality. He's seeing it with his heart as much as his head, and he's experiencing joy as a result. So this is a real vision, this is an ideal of how beautiful it can be if we can open up more to the mystery of life. So joy can be found in uncertainty and non-fixedness. And we might have had an experience of that ourselves as we've been practicing meditation. So in the sutra we hear that, so know that the Bodhisattva, holding to nothing whatever, but dwelling in prajna wisdom, is freed of delusive hindrance, rid of the fear bred by it, and reaches clearest nirvana. So the Bodhisattva is dwelling in this wisdom. He's not just figuring it out, it's his whole being. He's really dwelling and coursing in this wisdom. I think that's important to say. He's also holding to nothing whatever. He's letting go. What would it be like to let go and be completely free? He's holding to nothing whatever, and he's freed of delusive hindrance. So by holding and clinging, we reinforce the delusion that we're fixed and separate. And by letting go and opening up to conditionality, we can be free from that delusive hindrance. And then we'll be rid of the fear bred by it. So fear arises when we have this hindrance or delusion that things are fixed. And we can be rid of the fear bred by it if we can let that go, let that hindrance go. So if I think of myself as separate, I'll feel insecure, and I'll feel like there's a little bit of kind of competition between us, because you're separate over there and I'm separate over here. And fear arises because I feel insecure. So insecurity means fear and further separation. But if I can see things as interconnected and in process, then I won't be as protective of myself, and I won't feel such a need to control everything in my environment. And I think this is partly why friendship and relationships are so important, because the more that we can open up to another person, the less insecure we'll feel, the more kind of we'll realise that, okay, other people are just like me. You know, we're not as separate. So friendships, Sangha, the trust and love that can develop between us as individuals can show that we're not as individual as we think we are. We're all very, very similar as human beings, and there's not such a separateness between us. So all Buddhas of past and present, Buddhas of future time, using this prajna wisdom, come to full and perfect vision. All Buddhas of past and present, so this just isn't an idea for now, or wasn't just an idea for when it was written. It's relevant and always relevant. And they're using this wisdom, again, it's not just something that they intellectually understand, they're putting it into practice, they're applying it. And they come to full and perfect vision. This ideal is possible. Hear then the great Dharani, the radiant peerless mantra, the prajna paramita, whose words allay all pain. Hear and believe its truth. Dharani just means mantra, so this is just introducing the mantra. It's a radiant, peerless mantra. And I like this word radiant because I thought people really do glow. People do become radiant the more that they practice meditation, maybe after some chanting. There's something that's visibly different. You know, their complexion brightens, they seem more open. The prajna paramita, that's the mantra, whose words allay all pain. So again, if we let go of the ideas that keep us fixed and separate, then we can enjoy freedom and potential instead, and less pain. And I think this is a beautiful ideal and a beautiful vision. So the pinnacle of this most condensed teaching of the Perfection of Wisdom text is a mantra. And that's why it's quite mysterious, I think. So mantra is experiential, it's less conceptual, an emotional turning about, a really knowing in my heart and guts. So the mantra is Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhi Swaha. So this is gone, gone, gone beyond, gone completely beyond. Awake. Hooray! just say that again. That's the meaning of this mantra. Gone, gone, gone beyond. Gone completely beyond. Awake. Hooray. Gone completely beyond has been taken to mean that collectively, with all beings, we can all go beyond to this deep wisdom. Bodhi is like awake or enlightened, and Swaha means hooray or how wonderful. Great word. So I think it's really important that the heart of the Prajnaparamita literature ends in a mantra. So the heart of the perfection of wisdom isn't some intellectual point, but it's something that can give us quite a beautiful glimpse, a feeling, or an intuitive sense of something beyond what is usually a quite superficial and utilitarian way that we interpret the world. I was thinking of other words for hooray, for the Swaha bit of the mantra. So I like to try and bring things a little bit more into the modern world. Hooray is something that I think I'd probably say. I don't know. I think my friends will say hooray. Maybe I do. Like, yeah, woo! And I thought of some really modern ones, but they're not really hooray. But these are the words that came up in my mind, and these are nailed it, and a really modern one, which is slayed it. So this word slay is getting used a lot nowadays. And I thought, that's not really it. So it might be what people say when they're really happy that they've done something. So it's a little bit like hooray, but actually it's completely not what we're aiming for. And I'm ashamed to say that it's what Dave and I did actually say to Satyajyoti at the end of her excellent talk last week. We both really enjoyed the talk, and I think Dave said nailed it, which meant that I then said, yeah, you slayed it. That's really cool. But yeah, so that's totally not what we're looking for. That's really like, I've nailed it, or, it's very, I don't know, I thought I will share this, because I think it really goes to show how much we really need this sutra at the moment. Okay, always, but particularly at the moment. Because I think it really counteracts this more individualistic, quite arrogant, even quite a violent approach to life. So it's like, I think that I can really do this on my own. I'm going to show you all how great I am. So instead of just saying, hooray, great, we've done this all together, we're saying, yeah, nailed it. I just think this is partly why the sutra is so important. So we can't know everything or control things as individuals. And we really need quite a lot of help in staying humble. So instead of thinking that I'm this great individual and I can do this, we need some help in staying humble and realistic in how far our conceptual understanding can take us. We need help to course in the deep wisdom of the beyond. And the Heart Sutra, it can help us to do this. It can help us to open up to the dazzling mystery of reality.